Hi, Rami. Welcome to the show.
Hey, John, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Looks very nice where you are. Where are you exactly?
I'm in Southern California. I'm in the Los Angeles area, so we're blessed to have a little bit of sun, but that crisp feel where it still feels like fall.
Not like up here in Nova Scotia, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I can
It's pretty
imagine.
damp and cold right now.
Oh,
So, we're here to talk about some children's books. And I always like to hear about how you go about writing a children's book because they're very different than novels, that's for sure. And I'm also interested in knowing what got you to write children's books. And anyway, I'd just like to know more about you. So why don't you tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got to this point?
sure, absolutely. I would say ever since I was about 4 or 5, I love telling stories, listening to stories. My dad is a great storyteller, so I think he passed that on to me. I'd like to think at least, but he was a fantastic storyteller. He would tell stories about the mundane, everyday things, going to the grocery store, coming back, and he had enough to fill in to actually make a story. So he was able to captivate you, and I felt like that was something I always wanted when I would tell a story, to paint the picture, make you feel like you were a part of that scene or that experience. And ever since then, I decided one outlet for telling stories besides sharing them verbally is to write them down. And my mom has always been my biggest cheerleader when it comes to pursuing writing. She saw talent in me and she said, no matter what you end up doing, please continue to write. And that's kind of been my mantra ever since I was 5 or 6. It's write, write, and then write some more. I decided to go into a couple different fields of study. I went into healthcare, I went into communications, but I knew that at the bread and butter of everything was my writing. And telling stories, I feel like, is the best way to connect with humankind. We're all from different walks of life, cultures, we speak different languages sometimes, but storytelling really unites people around the world. And you don't have to speak the same language or express yourself in the same way to understand the power of a story. So I got into children's book writing about 7 years ago. I had written a few short stories when I was much, much younger. And I decided, you know what, it's probably worth pursuing self publishing a book, seeing what happens. And again, my mom comes back into this story. She said, Rami, you've been doing so many other things outside of writing and storytelling. Why not get back into doing that? Just something part time. So I listened to her words. And this was before my wife and I had any children. So I felt like, let's put this out there. And then in 2018, the next year, we had our first child,
Oh,
and he's now 6. He just turned 6, and now we have a 2.5-year-old as well. So having two boys has really inspired me to continue wanting to write. And one thing about me is that I've always had this inner child. No matter how old I get, I've always felt like there's an inner child talking to me through my stories. It's that living your childhood through these simple stories that can be really, really fun to listen to. They're bouncy, they're airy, there's not too much, I don't want to say substance to them, but there's not so much fluff to them as much as just bringing characters to life.
right.
And I've always enjoyed creating my own characters in my head, providing them with voices, and then seeing them actually become, in my world, real. Kind of like in the Harry Potter series, you have all of these fantastical creatures. When you're reading a book, you have to imagine them and you have to visualize them. And that's kind of what I set to accomplish with my books. It's to bring characters to life.
And which one's your latest one you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. The latest one is Blueberry Fairy. I released that about 4 or 5 months ago. And Blueberry Fairy is really a tale of a magical fruit, a blueberry. She has wings, she's got a wand, she's got all these special powers, and she lives in a fantastical land called Fruitopia. And in Fruitopia, of course, you have fruits of all sorts, but she's really been the main protagonist when it comes to bringing dreams to reality. So they all look to her to kind of bring things that they want to life. But as always is the case, there's a villain, there's someone that wants what she has, and that's where we have the antagonist, and he's a raisin. And the raisin was once a youthful grape, and he has ripened over time, and he's turned wrinkly, and he's not very happy with his life, so he wants what the Blueberry Fairy has. And so there is the tension in Blueberry Fairy.
Excellent.
Blueberry Fairy is finally met with some confrontation.
Oh, wow. What age group is this for?
It's a wide range. I would say it's anywhere from 3 to 10. So I go from pre-K, TK years to about
Mhm.
fifth grade.
Yeah,
I've been blessed to speak at a lot of elementary schools, and I
good.
find that, yeah, so local schools and then some schools a little bit outside the LA area have given me the opportunity to talk to kids about writing and what it's like being an author. And I also illustrate my books, so author slash illustrator, and really trying to inspire them to bring all of the things that are in their imagination either onto paper, or if they don't want to be an author, they can draw them, they can speak them, however it is they want to share their story. But I remind them that we're all
Yeah,
storytellers.
of course. I agree with you. Absolutely. Well, besides having an antagonist and a protagonist in your story, is there a message somewhere in there?
Absolutely. I think that's probably the main reason why I continue writing children's books. It's that now that I have two kids of my own, and my wife and I are constantly sharing messages of hope and kindness with them, that's really what my stories so far have been about. And I plan to continue doing that. It's messages of kindness, spreading that kind of joy to others, believing in others, being resilient. The Blueberry Fairy is kind of the epitome of you have so much going for you, but then all of a sudden, the next day happens, and all of a sudden you don't have what it is that you had the day before. You're met with a challenge. So being able to be resilient and strong in the face of adversity while still embodying that kindness, not losing your kindness just because you have a villain like a raisin, or you have a challenge that came your way. It's actually saying I'm still going to stay kind through it all, but my strength is going to rise, and therefore that helps whoever's on the other side understand where you're coming from. So my messages speak about heart, hope, and kindness.
Well, we need that message more than ever. That's for sure.
Totally agree.
Yes. And when was Blueberry Fairy released?
It was released in June 2024.
Yes. So that's
So just
it's about
about
half a year
4 months.
now. How's the sales for you?
So far, so good. Most of the sales have been word of mouth, so it's kind of the boots on the ground work. I'm trying to build my Rami Stories brand. Anytime I speak to kids, I tell them, look, whatever your first name is, you can add the word stories to it, and that becomes your story. It becomes the way that you tell a story. So I decided to call it Rami Stories. It actually originates from when I was in my teenage years. I would tell stories to friends, and my stories happen to be a little bit more vivid, a little bit more detailed. And others would say, oh, here comes a Rami story. So a Rami story, you got to have time for it. He's going to
Yeah.
take you down this cinematic journey. So that's the way I tell a story. And, John might have his way of telling stories, and Paul might have his. So it's just a way of telling stories. So yeah, thankfully the sales have been pretty good to start. I'm focusing on brand building right now to make sure that people know the kinds of stories I want to share, so
Yep.
that hopefully they get hooked on the subsequent ones that I'm going to release.
In a children's story like that, you have illustrations. Where do they come from?
From the mind.
But
There,
who,
yeah,
who creates them? Do you create your
I
own?
do. Yes, I
Oh,
am
really?
the illustrator slash author of my books, and
Okay.
I plan to continue doing that. My mom, actually, who I mentioned, she's a watercolor artist, so she
Okay.
has kind of passed down my love of art, passed down her love of art to me. And for me, I'm more of a sketch artist. I'll call myself an artist, but really an amateur artist. I like to draw with my 6 year old. I like to draw with my 2.5 year old. We just
Very
draw
good.
characters, and that's kind of inspired me to want to draw my own pages. But
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've brought them to life in the best way that I could, the way that I envision them, basically.
Now, how long is the book? Usually they're pretty short, aren't they?
Yeah, so the reason why I feel like the age range goes all the way up to about 10 is before those chapter novels start hitting, early middle schoolers, I felt like I wanted to make them, they're 24 to 28 pages, but
Okay.
each page only has a 4 line stanza. So it's not a full page of text.
Of
It's
course.
more it's more image accompanying those 4 lines. So
Okay.
it's about 24 to 28 pages. I felt like that was a good length. I don't really have this particular number in
Yeah.
mind, but
Yeah.
ever since I wrote An Almond All Alone, I felt like that was a good rhythm to start the story, peak it, and then resolve it.
Right. What have you noticed with other children books writers? And I imagine that you've met a few, or you're aware of that industry since you're in it, where perhaps they're using AI. Is that come around? Is that a thing now?
It is a thing now. Yeah, I actually drew the pages for An Almond All Alone 7 years ago, all by hand. And with the assistance of my mom, we were able to get some watercolor and bring the color to life. And then with Blueberry Fairy, I was gifted a iPad recently, and so I decided to self-teach digital art. And I actually learned a lot about how you can use programs such as Adobe and Procreate to sketch, but then fill in the color and do the shading and different kind of illustration tactics that you may not be able to do as well when you're just hand drawing. So I
Right.
haven't gone down the route of AI. I'm not closed off to it, but I'm kind of a little old school in that I like to just let the hand go and see where it's going to flow with regards to the characters and the scenes.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're good at it, you should do it for sure. Now, it doesn't have many words on each page. I could picture that easily. But then, of course, you have to do all the sketches and all that work. How long did it take you to put Blueberry Fairy book together?
A couple of months, I would say about 3 to 4 months, and that's because I'm not working on it full time. So, amidst life and a full time job and everything that kind of comes, I also coach my 6-year old, so there's a lot of extracurricular, activities that we're involved in. So all the time that I get, either early in the morning or late in the evening, I dedicated about 3 to 4 months worth of that time span. It's the
Mhm.
illustrations, of course, that take the longest. The story writing isn't extremely onerous for me. It'll take about a week or two to put my drafts together, have a couple of different sets of eyes, take a look at it, see if there's anything that might need a little tweaking. My wife has been amazing at providing a little bit of a non authorial direction and just saying, I think you might want to get to this sooner. I think you might want to establish this character faster.
Called
So
editing, I'm pretty sure.
yes, yes, spousal editing, and it really comes in handy. But yeah, just having some family members look it over and offer
Yeah,
some feedback has been very helpful.
yeah. What a different world that is from us novelists who take about a year to write a novel and all the editing that goes after that. But when you were satisfied with the final copy, what did you do next? Did you send it off somewhere for, well, I guess editing, or or you just,
Yeah, it was more self-editing for me. I,
okay,
I run through things. So in my actual full-time job, I work in communications, and so I do a lot of writing and self-editing. So, using those skills and just proofreading my work many, many times, and then
yeah,
also getting those sets of eyes to do that too.
okay. Now, I guess you're using the special paper with the, best possible photo
Yes,
reproduction and all
exactly.
that. Yeah,
Full color print,
yeah,
best paper, laminated cover.
yeah. How does that reflect on the price?
It definitely eats at the final profit for sure, but
Yeah.
I'm
But then
I'm a
it
lot
looks
less
good.
concerned. Thank you. Exactly. It looks good. It's something, I feel like children's books, especially because they're so colorful and vivid, they last in the bookshelves of kids' bedrooms for so long.
Yeah.
And I want my pieces to do just that. It's
Okay.
less about the actual profit margin. It's more about, are kids satisfied around the world, around the nation with Rami stories.
Yeah. Well, then you have to get work on a series of Rami stories because usually, they like to have the whole series of a
Absolutely.
certain type of story that they like.
That's, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the plan, by the way, John. I'm working on a second installment of Blueberry Fairy as we speak.
Okay. Very good. Just as a technical question, because I'm a technician, would
Sure.
it be the same size so that you could line them up and they fit? The,
Absolutely.
yeah.
An Almond All Alone is actually smaller. I started it out more of a landscape horizontal format. And
Mhm.
then when I started doing digital art with Blueberry Fairy, I realized, to me, the bigger the better when it comes to, this age group. And then it's also nicer to display. So currently I have it at an 8.5 by 11 size for Blueberry Fairy, whereas the an Almond All Alone was about 5.5 by 7.5.
Right. Totally different shape. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, tell us all about that, an Almond All Alone book.
Yeah, that's so the inspiration for that was I'm a big foodie. I do enjoy eating and trying new foods, and food is definitely a big part of my day to day. And I happened to one morning in 2016 be eating some oatmeal, and I poured in a bunch of almonds, and I felt like there was one that was misshaped. It was different than the rest, and I thought, wow, what if that character came to life? What if the almond was broken in real life or in some kind of imaginary land? What would the other perfectly shaped almonds think of that almond? Would they accept him? Would they bully him? Would they, make him feel cast out? And so that was kind of the inspiration. And the same thing with Blueberry Fairy. I was eating blueberries the next day, and then I thought, wow, this blueberry is so perfectly blue and rounded. What if you added some kind of special power to it and it came to life? So far, all of my books have been about food. I don't plan on that being the case moving forward, but An Almond All Alone was really just trying to find a main character that you could empathize with. I feel like all of us at one point in our lives have been the almond. We've all had
Yeah. Or
something different.
different. Yeah. Something's different
Exactly.
about it. Yeah.
Exactly. We're all broken in a certain way. We're different. We're unique. And it took a lot of going through Nutopia, which is the land of the nuts,
Of
for
course.
the almond to, yeah, naturally, right? For the almond to find a friend. And it was that friend that believed in the almond that no one else believed in him. to change the course of his life. So that to me was the big theme.
Is this connected to Blueberry Fairy, or is it a totally different type of story and they're not ever going to meet?
Actually, they are somewhat intertwined in Blueberry Fairy, but very indirectly, kind of like a Where's Waldo type of thing, where you see him in the corner. So in one of the pages of Blueberry Fairy, you have the almond and his friend, who's the walnut. They make an appearance, but they don't appear as a part of the story. They make an appearance because it's a land that happens to be adjacent to Fruitopia. So Nutopia, Fruitopia, and then any other lands that I create might just be all in the same world. But they aren't directly related. It's more so they have their own characters based on their food category.
Okay. Well, you're a busy person and you're a young family. I guess you can take a couple of months off of writing in between and still maybe put out 3 books a year.
Yeah, that's the plan. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, my hope is to make the brand into something that you can want, not just the stories, but also you want the characters, whether it's t-shirts, whether it's plushies, things that actually bring those characters to life.
Mm-hmm.
I created a t-shirt with a designer just so that I could do these school tours, these school visits. And on one side, I have Team Almond, and it's a picture of the almond from an Almond All Alone. And the other side, it's Team Blueberry, and it's the Blueberry Fairy. So at the end of my talks, I ask all the kids in the room, or if it's an assembly, are you guys on Team Almond or Team Blueberry? So that they feel connected with the two stories, and they can tell me why. Oh, I like the Blueberry Fairy because, versus the almond, I connected with this. So it kind of engenders a lot of subsequent conversations that you can have about the stories. And that's what I'm really seeking.
Okay. So you prefer objects like fruits and perhaps even vegetables or nuts rather than, say, animals like dogs and cats?
In the second installment of Blueberry Fairy, you start to see some animals. I won't give it totally away, but I will say that the fruits do encounter some animals. So food, even though it's a big part of me, I love to eat, but at the same time, I want to veer away from it just being an ABC book about almonds, blueberries, and chocolate. Let's say, I'm looking to incorporate other types of characters too.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll put you in a full frame so you can pitch your latest book, Blueberry Fairy, and you can let us know where you can get it and why you should buy it.
Absolutely. So on Amazon, I'm currently self-published with both An Almond All Alone and Blueberry Fairy. So if you go to Amazon.com, you can type in the titles, An Almond All Alone or Blueberry Fairy, or even my name, Rami Jandali. And if you type in my name, you'll find the books that I have. Eventually, I'd love to get into Barnes & Noble and different spaces as well. But currently, Amazon is by far the most convenient space for me to be selling books because they provide the printing and the distribution until I have more and more books to come. So you can also go to my website, ramistories.com, and learn a little bit more about me and the books, and they also have links in there.
Okay, excellent. Well, I expect to have you back as a guest because
I would love that.
Get right to work. Don't neglect your family, of course, but I think
Definitely.
You have a really interesting story to tell there. And
Thank
we'll
you, John.
see you next year, I guess.
I appreciate it. Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to season 5.
Okay. Bye, Rami.
Bye there, John. Take care.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.